Okay, it is exactly at 12 o'clock noon, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Elizabeth Rico, and I'm Outreach Manager of Leadership and Business Development here at the Arizona Farm Bureau. And I'm excited this month to have Anna Kennedy Otto with us. She's also a member of the Arizona Farm Bureau Government Relations team, and she's going to talk about the Arizona Farm Bureau Transportation Handbook and some of the important things that you need to know, some updates and things to keep you safe and in the know while you're traveling around on our Arizona roads. So Anna, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. My name is Anna Kennedy Otto. I'm with the Arizona Farm Bureau, as Elizabeth mentioned. I wear a couple of hats within the organization. The primary one is the Government Relations Manager, but I'm also the Outreach Manager for Yuma County, since I work remotely from that location. So, are you ready for me to go ahead and start? Or?
Sure, yeah, let's jump right into it.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let me get this slideshow started. All right, can you see the screen and presentation view? Perfect. All right.
Perfect.
Great. Well, and Elizabeth, thank you again for the opportunity to participate in our Wednesday webinars and give our members an update on the Arizona Farm Bureau Ag Transportation Handbook. What I'd like to do over the course of this webinar is start off with a little bit of a history of the handbook, and then a quick brief review of the contents of what's contained in the handbook. And then I'm going to spend a little bit of time going over the areas that were updated, where the major update areas took place. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on the section on implements of husbandry, and then wrap up if anybody has any questions, and also providing contact information for myself and some of the agencies that deal with ag transportation. So to get started, the Ag Transportation Book is essentially a resource guide that helps our members understand the requirements to operate vehicles in Arizona that transport agricultural equipment, goods, or animals. And one thing I left off there, it also provides some information in regards to implements of husbandry. And our third edition was just recently released in January of this year, but this book actually has a longer history. It was first published in 2003, and the reason that it came about is that we had staff that were routinely getting questions from members in regards to various transportation laws and regulations and exemptions, and they found that they were often looking up the same information time and time again. And so they thought, why don't we put this information together in a handbook and make it available not only to our to staff, but to have it available to our members as well. And so that was the impetus of getting the book together. It was updated in 2013. And then, as I mentioned again, just recently this year, we've slightly changed the format of the book. It used to be a flip book, but now the binding is just right along the left-hand side, but the design has remained the same. And that design is that it is a nice, narrow book that will easily fit into the glove compartment of a farm or ranch vehicle. So, if our members, if you are an Arizona Farm Bureau member and you'd like to receive a free copy of the handbook, we ask that you send an email to transportation@azfb.org. And in that email, please include your name, your mailing address, and the number of copies that you would like to receive, and we'll make sure to get that sent out to you. What is new with this edition is that we've also made it available online. And so I'd like to be able to show that to you. So hopefully this will work. I'm going to click on the link. Members go to, can you see that there? Did it show up, Elizabeth?
I think it's still thinking. So try clicking it one more time.
Hold on one moment. We got this to work.
I know when we were practicing. It may work if you unshare and then share your screen if it still buffers after a second.
Okay, let me try it one more time from here. Oh, dang it.
Yeah, I think you may be better off unsharing your screen and then pulling up and sharing the actual internet screen that pulls up. Of course, it won't work just like it did when we practiced.
Okay, how's this?
That's perfect. Yeah, we can see the website.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So essentially you go to www.azfb.org, you click on the public policy tab, you go to our resources and links tab, and then the third second, I would mention that we have a lot of information on our resources and links tab. So if you've not been to this section, please take a look at all the information we have there. But the transportation book, the electronic version, is also, the link is included here. Members do need to log in. So if you've never logged in before, you'll go through the various prompts to do that. But you do need to log in. I will log in, and we have two different versions of the transportation handbook. So if you click on the first one, you're essentially going to get a version that looks exactly like the hard copy and as if you were flipping through a hard copy of the book. So if you have not had a chance to take a look or ordered your free copy and you are watching this webinar or watch this webinar shortly after, I encourage you to log into your Farm Bureau account and take a look at some of the information that I'll be describing later on in some of the areas that were updated, but it's pretty easy to flip through this version. Let me get out of this one. And then the other version we have is the more traditional PDF. So depending on what you may be accessing the book from, it might be easier to look at it in this format here, but we've tried to make sure that it's available in several different formats and easy enough for our members to get to when they need that information. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen real quick and go back to my PowerPoint.
And Anna, I have to say, it's a really, really great design too, to have that a slim book rather than a thick standard size book. So it's easy to keep in everyone's farm vehicle. So that was a really, really great way to format that.
Yes, so we have Liz Foster. I don't know if she's chimed in, but she was the one that originally designed the book, and that was smart thinking on her part. And you know, I mentioned earlier, Farm Bureau members receiving a free copy. You can get additional copies that you can put if you have more than one farm vehicle. So it's easily accessible to you or maybe your farm employees that are traveling on Arizona's roadways. Can you still hear me pretty good? Because we were having, okay, perfect. All right, so that's basic information on how to obtain a copy of the book. I've got to get back to my slide over here that lets me get down to the next one. All right, so to quickly cover what all is contained, or essentially the table of contents in the book, most of these sections remain the same, but we go over the Arizona state statutory definitions that pertain to transportation, ag transportation. We have some FMCSA, which is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration definitions. And because there are a number of acronyms throughout the book, we do have a section that goes over that. The guts of it really start with the commercial driver's license requirements, CDL requirements, and goes on to qualification of drivers, health card, drug and alcohol testing, hours of service, electronic logging devices, US DOT numbers and marking of commercial motor vehicles, inspection, repair, and maintenance, safety equipment checklist, farm plates, hazardous materials, hazmat facts, hazmat security plans, implements of husbandry, and vehicle loads. And what I would note is that the hazmat facts, the hazmat security plans, and the vehicle loads, those are 3 brand new sections to the transportation book. As I mentioned, the other ones are remain the same, but some areas were updated. And so to begin that discussion of the areas that were updated, the first one really occurs within the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration definition, and specifically a new definition for covered farm vehicles. And what that is if a farm vehicle meets a certain set of criteria, they are afforded a number of different exemptions. And so To qualify as a covered farm vehicle, essentially that vehicle needs to be registered in the state with a license plate or another designation that is issued by that state that allows law enforcement to identify it as a farm vehicle. It must be operated by the owner or operator of a farm or their employee or family member, used to transport agricultural commodities, livestock, machinery, or supplies. And then finally, it's not a for-hire motor carrier. So if it meets all those various pieces of criteria, then that vehicle would be exempt from a number of things, including commercial driver's license standards, physical qualification and examination, controlled substance and alcohol use testing, hours of service, as well as inspection, repair, and maintenance. And how those exemptions apply is interesting in the sense that if that covered farm vehicle is 26,001 pounds or less, those exemptions afforded to that vehicle are nationwide, essentially all across the United States. If that particular vehicle is more than 26,001 pounds, then those exemptions that I just mentioned are limited to 150 air miles around the farm. And one of the things that I would mention that is not new, but I'd ask members to do is as you go through the transportation book is to pay close attention to the exemptions. Most of them are limited in some way or another, either to 150 air miles, tied to the weight of the vehicle, determined whether or not the vehicle is in interstate versus intrastate commerce. So pay attention to those little caveats in there to make sure that you're operating your vehicle legally and that the exemptions apply as they should. The next section is a bit of a minor update. It has to do with the health card, drug and alcohol testing. And essentially here, drivers, again, of certain weighted vehicles are required to have a valid certificate of physical examination. And the intrastate vehicle load in the previous edition was somewhere, I think it was 14,000 pounds, but Arizona state statute was revised between now and 2013, and that is now 26,001 pounds. So if you are traveling interstate with a vehicle with that poundage or weight rating, I should say, then those individuals would need to have a certificate of physical examination.
Hey, Anna, I'm going to jump in really quick. Your mic muffled just a little bit and it kind of muted you.
Okay. Do you recall what did I?
That's better. We could hear you, but it was muffled and kind of quiet.
Okay. All right.
It's working now.
Okay. I'll try to sit a little bit closer to the computer. The next section that has some changes has to do with the hours of service and the electronic logging devices, which was a requirement for a lot of vehicles transporting goods and commodities. Now, there are exemptions for agricultural operations from hours of service. And as I mentioned previously, a number of those exemptions, again, are limited to travel within 150 air miles of the farm or ranch. Now, if the operation is exempt from the hours of service, then they are also exempt from the electronic logging devices. So that was the change there, but we've also expanded that section quite a bit because again, when those logging devices came into play, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration found that they needed to issue some regulatory guidance to provide some clarification in and around the exceptions relating to agriculture commodities. And so basically that regulatory guidance helped to clarify, and I'm going to read through this real quick, but drivers operating unladen vehicles traveling either to pick up an agricultural commodity or returning from a delivery point, drivers engaged in trips beyond 150 air miles from the source of the agricultural commodity, determining the source of agricultural commodities under the exemption, and how the exceptions applies when agricultural commodities are loaded at multiple sources during a trip. You know, again, because the hours of service are limited to usually 150 air miles, and then you may need to have an electronic logging device, and all these questions arose. FMCA CSA issued this guidance, and it is effective through June 7th of 2023. And so that information is included in the handbook. And then we also have note the links directly to FMCSA where our members can get additional details in regards to this specific provision. Moving on to USDOT numbers. The change here had to do with there is now an exemption from having a USDOT number for farm vehicles in Arizona that are in intrastate commerce. So if your travel is limited to just within the state of Arizona, you would not need to have a USDOT number. Now, if one of the things that's included in the book, if a single trip across the state line could trigger, okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me a little bit better?
It comes in and out, and I don't know if it's you sitting closer to it.
Is it good now?
Yeah, it gets a little bit louder. I think maybe if you speak a little bit louder, even if it muffles, it might catch it a little bit better. Sorry.
All right, sounds good. The other thing, my air conditioner's going on and off, so I don't know if that's happening also, but I will endeavor to speak louder. So yeah, so as I was mentioning, the USDOT number, there is now an exemption for farm vehicles traveling intrastate. But if you do, if any of your business requires you to do travel across state lines, then there would be that requirement for a DOT number. And there's additional information again in the section of where the DOT number can be obtained and what all the requirements are for the markings on the vehicle. In relation to farm plates historically, and the reason that they came about was to provide farmers and ranchers with simply a reduced vehicle weight and registration fee. Having a farm plate was not a prerequisite for any sort of exemption. However, now that we have the covered farm vehicle provisions available through FMCSA, and the requirement there that a vehicle be designated in some way as a farm vehicle, the farm plate is now that designation here in Arizona. So if you have a farm plate in Arizona and you met the other requirements that I had mentioned, your vehicle would be considered a covered farm vehicle and would have access to those exemptions that I had noted. So that's the important change there, and one that we made sure to print in bold in the handbook. And then the next two sections, the hazardous materials sections, again, not a new section, but it's a section that we opted to expand on based on some work that we did with one of our county farm bureaus that was having some issues in regards to this particular topic and the transport of some hazardous materials. There are some agricultural products that are defined as hazardous materials. However, they're defined as class 3, class 8, class 9, which is not a very good descriptor when you're trying to figure out what exactly that relates to in terms of an agricultural product. So we've provided a table that specifically says that class 3 hazardous chemical is a flammable liquid, and examples of that are gas and diesel. So we've provided a little bit more explanation there of the agricultural products that fall into that. And then we provided various scenarios to help our members determine when the transport of hazardous material applies. There are cases where all the exemptions apply. There are cases where there are limited exemptions. And then there are cases where none of the exemptions apply. So providing that information, and then also a small section on hazmat facts to help answer some of the questions in regards to, do I need a CDL? What are the training requirements? Those sorts of things. And then finally related to that is the hazmat security plan. This is a totally brand new section. And basically these plans are required of certain operations. Now, there are some agricultural operations exempt from having these plans, but there are essentially 3 basic questions that if a farmer ranch operation answers yes to, they would need to have a security plan in place. And I'll just quickly review those 3 questions. The first one is, do you make 500,000 or more in annual gross receipts from the sale of agricultural commodities or products? Do you transport hazardous materials not in direct support of your farming operation? And finally, do you transport hazardous materials by highway or rail outside 150-mile radius of your farming operation? So if you answer yes to any one of those questions, you must have a hazmat security plan. And the handbook now includes what the components of such a plan are. And then we do have a link, which is right there below where the online versions are located, where folks can take a look at a sample hazmat plan if that's something that they determine that they need to have on their farm and ranch operation. And then last, and it is the very last page, is vehicle loads. And essentially what this has to do with is Arizona law requires that when you've loaded up a trailer or whatever, it needs to be done in such a way that you know, the materials and whatever is loaded on there is not going to fall, leak, or anything like that. But there is an exception, and it is for agriculture, where minor pieces of agricultural materials such as leaves and stems may fall from a load. And I would add that the inclusion of that particular section comes directly from interaction with a Farm Bureau member several years ago, where they had been pulled over by law enforcement because, and being told that they needed to have their, I think they were hauling silage or something, needed to be covered. And anyways, we were able to find the information, but then also realize that this was something that should probably be included in the book. So that's how that made it in there. So those are the areas where the significant updates took place. I would mention that it is my plan over the course of the year to write some articles about some of these specific updates to be published in our Arizona Agriculture. So be on the lookout for that. And then moving on to the next area, implements of husbandry. Now, the majority of the book really does cover farm vehicles, so pickup trucks, your semis that are hauling ag commodities, transporting ag commodities. But there is a section on implements of husbandry. There is nothing new with this section, other than I just wanted to point out it is a very important section because it's dealing with those farm implements that are specifically designed for agricultural purposes and exclusively used to conduct agricultural operations. And one of the questions that I get once every 1 to 2 years is, can I drive a tractor on a road? And the answer to that is yes, but the law does note that it's incidentally operated on the roadways. And incidental means that you're either traveling between a farm or another part of the same farm, from another farm, or between a farm and a place of repair, supply, or storage. And then in addition to that, implements of husbandry are also exempt from a number of other pieces of state statute relating to transportation, which we've listed here. They're exempt from reasonable and prudent speed, minimum speed limits, railroad grade crossing requirements, certain equipment requirements, tire equipment restrictions, vehicle size, weight, and load limits, vehicle registration, driver's license requirements, certain removal and impoundment laws, financial responsibility requirements, as well as use fuel and motor vehicle fuel taxes. And I would say that it is a good idea to maybe take a look at some of these areas of statute, and that's why I've listed the link there of where the full statutes are located, www.azledge.gov /ARS title / for a complete explanation of what exactly the exemptions are from, but please note that there are a number of exemptions afforded to implements of husbandry. And so with that, need for additional assistance or have questions, I encourage our members to reach out to us. I've listed my phone number there. And if you have a transportation related question, in addition to needing to order a transportation handbook, I'd encourage you to reach out to me via the email transportation@azfb.org. It's not unheard of for members to receive a citation and have questions about that. They may not have had their handbook with them, or maybe they showed the police officer the handbook and he decided that he wasn't going to act on it. He'd leave it up to a judge. We can help you with some of that. We can be a resource for you. I would know that we are not attorneys. So there may be situations where you may want to contact your attorney directly for specific questions, but we are certainly happy to help in whatever way we can in helping you understand some of these exemptions and how they apply. Another great resource is the Arizona Department of Transportation, and I've listed several different divisions that our folks can reach out to: the General Motor Vehicle Division, the Commercial Vehicle Division, as well as the General Non-Motor Vehicle Division. I would say that the Commercial Vehicle Division would probably be the most appropriate in terms of any farm vehicle questions. And even if you reach out to those folks and you feel like your answers or the answer you got was not to your satisfaction, we do have contacts within Arizona Department of Transportation as well as DPS, and we're happy to maybe assist with finding out some more information for our members. So all of this contact information is listed in the handbook as well within the front cover. So if you don't have your handbook, as I mentioned, certainly get it by logging in and taking a look at the online version. So with that, Elizabeth, that's all I had. And if we have any members on who might have questions, I'm happy to attempt to answer them. There's a lot in this book. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. If that's, well, you know what, I'm going to leave it on just so in case anybody wants to get that information.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, just in case anyone has questions to contact you, especially your email address and phone number. We did have a couple questions that came in. One of the questions was, do you have to be an Arizona Farm Bureau member to receive the transportation book?
Yes.
What is the best way for somebody to join the Arizona Farm Bureau or to be a member of the Arizona Farm Bureau?
You know, I'm going to stop sharing my screen very quickly, if that's okay, because I'm going to show what I think is the easiest way for joining Arizona Farm Bureau. Let's see here. And that's by going to our website, www.azfb.org. And right up in the upper right-hand corner, if you can see, are you seeing, is it showing? Okay.
Yep, we can see it.
You can join. And it's very easy to, oh, that brings up my account. So I'm going to go back out of there. But that's the easiest way to join, is to go to www.azfb.org. And it's easy enough to sign up for a membership there, and also get a lot of good information about the organization.
Agreed. It's also super easy to renew as well. If you know anybody who has a membership that maybe has lapsed, or they haven't got around to renewing it, or they had some questions about that, it's super easy to join and renew online. And if you know somebody who has questions with that, they can contact any one of the outreach managers or even Anna at the transportation@azfb.org. So those are also really great things to note. Anna, what is one of the things or one of the questions you get the most commonly related to transportation laws or the transportation handbook?
Well, I mentioned one of them, which was the can I have my tractor on the road? You know, so a lot of the questions sometimes have to do with the implements of husbandry. But generally speaking, it's somebody will get pulled over and they'll get a citation, and it can be all kinds of different things really that show up. And that is why the resource book has been helpful in terms of being able to provide what the rules and regulations are that usually exonerate our members who are on the road. One of the things I would mention, though, is if somebody gets a citation, we usually do ask that you provide us with a copy of it, because then we can actually see what statutes or what the violations are, and go from there.
Absolutely, yeah, and that way we can assess the how to help them a little bit better.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
So how often does the handbook get updated?
It's kind of as needed, you know. This particular update was long overdue. We generally try to do it when there have been some major updates, either with federal or state regulations. And so the updates in regards to the covered farm vehicle were pretty significant and took place actually a number of years ago. We just hadn't gotten the book updated. So it really has to do when there are updates to regulations, state or federal. And they usually need to be significant. I think one of the things that we might do moving forward is if there are minor changes, making those noted on our website.
Yeah, that's a great point. I also appreciate how not only will the transportation book is available online and they can order copies, but the articles that will come out periodically highlighting some of those changes. So if somebody hasn't gotten a chance to look at some of those articles, where would they find those articles?
Well, I haven't written them yet, but I do believe that once the Arizona Ag is printed, I do believe that they do.
We lost your audio just a little bit.
Okay, it's tied to my air conditioning. That's what I've decided. Can you hear me now?
Is it just goes quieter when your AC kicks on?
It just kicks, yeah. So. I know it'll be in Arizona Ag, but I do know that we also try to broadcast those articles a little bit further through our blog. So checking into our website and the news and resource section, folks should be able to see those articles as they are published throughout the year.
Perfect. And Julie jumped on and reminded you that you have written one. And it was about the launch of the handbook coming out. Yes. So technically, you have written one.
I have written one. Yes, it was very minor. Not a lot of detail in terms of the updates, but yeah, certainly making sure that our members know that the book is available.
Perfect. Well, I don't see any other new questions coming in, but this was a really great, short, brief introduction to the handbook. I know it's chock full of information that will be helpful. So again, Anna, if for just one more time, you would share your screen with all of that contact information. And again, this recording gets put up on the Arizona Farm Bureau website. So if you are joining us and you've missed this information, or you want to see this webinar one more time or 5 more times, if that's what you would like, it'll be available up on the website as well. So all this information is up on your screen. You can reach out to Anna or myself, and we can get you in touch with the right person or to the right avenue. And again, to order those transportation handbooks if you would need those. So Anna, thank you again for joining us. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day and busy week to go over this with us. And we'll see you guys next time for our next webinar Wednesday, which will be the last Wednesday of every month. We'll have these here and then online at Arizona Farm Bureau. So thank you, Anna, for joining us. I appreciate you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.